Pokemon may not be known for any kind of crazy stories or anything, but you'd be a dang liar if you said that Pokemon didn't have some of the craziest plot twists of all time. Now that so many of them are so well known, it may not seem like much, but I'm telling you, as we explore the best twist that the series has to offer, you're gonna go through an emotional roller coaster of nostalgia and shock. On the other hand, I know it may seem hard to think that Pokemon has twists of this level because a good amount of them were meant to be twists, but they weren't twisty at all, you feel me? Though as you'll see, most of these failed twists are from Gen 6 and beyond, and they all kind of pertain to the same thing. You'll see what I'm talking about later on in the video. So let's go over the best and worst plot twists in each Pokemon generation. Kanto might be a bland region. Some may argue that the plot of this game and its Pokemon just weren't ambitious enough. But you cannot sit here and tell me that Gen 1 didn't have some of the best plot twists in all of Pokemon. Those of you who grew up playing these games with no knowledge of what was to come prior, I want you to remember the days where you named your rival Buttface or Gary to parallel the anime. But at that point, what's the difference? And you were so annoyed with the way he spoke and wanted to clobber his face when you fought every single time. Meanwhile, every time you fought Team Rocket, you felt like a hero. The very best. A 10-year-old with so much power to save the world. You were winning at every point. You thought Team Rocket Silph was it. You thought the rival fight before the Elite Four was it. But no. Even after you beat Team Rocket, you come to the shocking realization that the puppet master behind all the crimes in the region is also the strongest gym leader. He who you thought was a pushover, someone who can never be in a position of respect, somehow managed to be the highest in a position of power that you've known thus far. It was inconceivable as a kid. And even worse, you beat your rival, you beat all the Ace Trainers that were to come, all the talks of the Elite Four in the Pokemon League echoed in your head, and you thought you just had to beat the 4 of them to become the very best, even being Lance's Dragonite, a Pokemon that you never seen before, only to find out that Buttface somehow got there faster than you did, when you clearly saw him leave behind you. What gives? That too, he's got the strongest team you've ever seen. These two twists were incredible. There was a reason why Pokemon way back in the day was always talked about on the playground. For everyone who's recently born or growing up playing the games now, maybe this is common knowledge to you, and you don't get the hype. And that's because these twists weren't presented to you as a twist. It was presented to you as knowledge. But ask anyone who was there at the time, these were some of the craziest things to experience playing a video game as a kid. And honestly, if you ask me, even as an adult for that matter. Well, besides that, Kanto and Gen 1 don't really have any other plot twists or anything, but if I had to pick something as the worst plot twist, I'd have to say it's Bill being a Pokemon. I was pretty excited to see a talking Pokemon in the games like Meowth in the anime, but they had to ruin it because Bill wanted to be back in his own body. Stupid Bill, you should have just stayed as a Pokemon, been like all the other annoying NPCs who talk for the silent protagonist. Hey! Gen 2 also makes it really easy with its best plot twist. This is undoubtedly Red at the top of Mount Silver. And the reason for this is because there is literally zero indication, zero build-up, absolutely nothing to hint at this reveal. And at the end, you're met with just that, silence. In both the background and his words. All that's left is to battle. Because that's all you've been doing. You beat the gym leaders of Johto, you beat the gym leaders of Kanto, you beat Team Rocket, and you beat the Elite Four and Champion twice over. Why would Mount Silver only open up to you after all that? Unless it was for one final battle. But no one ever saw Mount Silver open up and thought that this is what it was for. People may have thought that it was so you can finally catch Larvitar or something. But in no way were they expecting to battle against themselves to play a character from the previous game with all the Kanto starters and Pikachu no less. This was the chef's kiss for the Gen 2 games, and in many people's eyes, even outside the Pokemon community, it's considered to be one of the craziest plot twists in video game history. I do want to give a shout out to the finding out that Silver is Giovanni's son as well, and while I know it's only in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and a bit earlier if you read the Adventures manga, I still want to keep it here for this part of the video, as it adds so much depth to Silver that wasn't there in the original games. In the original games, he was just a prick. But here, he's got depth to him, and you actually care for him and empathize with him, all because of this one revelation. So I do think it's worth mentioning. Gen 2 also doesn't have any real bad twists as such because there's not much to the plot, but if I had to pick one here again, it's gotta be Whitney not giving us a badge because she was sad. When Claire didn't want to give us a badge, we actually had a side quest to do, and it was kinda cool, and you even got a Dratini out of it, which was worth it. But with Whitney, what was the point? You walk up like a square or two and she's like, all fine. Like, what? Though Gen 3 and Gen 4 were some of the most beloved games in the franchise, I was struggling to find any substantial twists in these games because I feel like there isn't too much to be shocked by here. I don't think they were going for that crazy surprise factor that they had in previous games, and were more so looking to flesh out an actual story. But that being said, I'm starting with the worst twist in Gen 3, and that's that in Ruby and Sapphire, they tried to make the opposite team seem like good guys. And I don't know how to explain this, but it's like we were watching the anime as kids. We knew both teams were evil, so when you play the games and hear that one team is good, it's like, whoa, okay, that's new. But if you think about it, or just play the other version for that matter, or play Emerald, none of it makes sense. They both technically want the same thing, but one team is ridiculing the other just because they're not getting any progress done. It was so stupid. The best plot twist in this game though is without a doubt hands down the fact that you have a dad in these games. A gym leader dad, mind you. 9 generations in, and he's the only one who didn't go to get the milk, cause the government is providing all that milk with that gym leader position, baby. Woo! I also thought that Steven and Cynthia being the champions of their respective regions was crazy, but I thought that as a kid and had no idea that the reason that we saw them around so frequently was because it was foreshadowing of them being champions, like how they did with Lance and technically the rival in Gen 1, so like, yeah, I don't know if it was just me or if I was dumb or what, but I wanted to mention it because like, I vividly remember wilding out once my friend and I found out that Cynthia was a champion. For Gen 4, its best plot twist is Giratina foiling Cyrus's plans. I get it, this wasn't some of the trailers and everything, but despite that, it still went crazy and served as a shock. If not for the actual events of the game, then at least the pop-up scare. But you have to realize most people who are playing through Platinum played through Diamond and Pearl, and there we stopped Cyrus in time. Here, it looked like Cyrus wasn't complete as a new world, especially because he had both the god of time and space staring us down under his control. Only for you, Cynthia, and Cyrus to be dragged into a different world, the Distortion world. And man, was this wild. Unprecedented for its time, and still to this day, unmatched in many ways. Palmer also being Barry's dad is one of the ones that I actually want to quickly mention here as well. For the worst ones, I think this is obvious. This is one character in these games who's absolutely freaking useless. One character who's notorious in these games for being a troll, for using a Pokemon that no one would ever think to use, and everyone would agree it's completely unfair, and that's gotta be Mindy from Snowpoint City with this stupid Everstone Haunter trade. Those poor kids who thought they would be getting a Gengar. Those poor kids who are confused thinking that trading isn't the way to get a Gengar. Why have you forsaken them, Game Freak? And you! Why have you forsaken me by not hitting that subscribe button? Don't forsake me. Please hit that subscribe button and spare me. It's Gen 6 onwards where we get some really bad plot twists, but Gen 5 is the pinnacle of Pokemon storytelling, so you know it's gonna get good. I can't really talk about the best and the worst plot twist separately here because I feel like it's all one big mishmash of emotions, and I'm kind of trying to find the worst plot twist here because it doesn't, you know, Black and White peak games, and Black 2 and White 2 don't really have much. So if you ask me, the best plot twist is N being the leader of Team Plasma, and the worst plot twist is Ghetsis being the true leader of Team Plasma. Now hear me out. I know this is revealed in Nimbasa City, but technically it's revealed at the very beginning of the game in the opening cutscene, so it's not really considered to be a twist. But I want you to know that opening cutscene is the twist. Bro, what the heck? A story being told in Pokemon without words, just through visual, music, and emotion? That is unheard of. That too regarding the most significant character in the game. And you know what? Maybe somehow you didn't realize that N was a leader of Team Plasma. Maybe it was a shock to you then. But even if it wasn't, you can't deny N coming by and stomping the hell out of Alder, summoning his entire castle and taking over the entire endgame in a way that we've never seen in any other Pokemon game is a crazy plot twist. Yes, unfortunately, Ghetsis was the true villain after all. Who could have seen that coming, right? But I don't think it takes away from things all too much because as we see in Black 2 and White 2, even half of Team Plasma didn't know about this, and later on caused the team to divide in two in a way that it worked out for the sequel. But even without Black 2 and White 2, N getting betrayed like this led to the most emotional and heartful ending of any Pokemon game, and one where you can straight up empathize with the one who you perceive to be the major antagonist of the game, who's also your major rival of the game. It's all too good. I'll give Black 2 and White 2 credit where credit is due, this time Iris traveling around the region with you as how all the other previous champions did, but this time you think nothing of it because you know Iris from the previous titles and all there is also here and there. But this time it turns out that Iris is the champion of the region, and that was crazy in and of itself. Gen 5 is peak, don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Gen 6 should be a no-brainer as to what the worst plot twist was. It was Lysander being the true villain of the games, and it's starting from here that for whatever reason, Game Freak decided to incorporate terrible villain plot twists as the main twist, as if we wouldn't get them. It's like they thought they did so well with Gen 5 that they thought they could do it for every generation. Well, they did get better near the end, but we'll talk about that a bit later. For now, it's about Lysander, and this guy from the very get-go screams evil. Everything about him matches Team Flare. What did Game Freak want us to think when we saw this guy? He only and only screams Team Flare boss. This was easily one of Game Freak's worst plot twists of all time, but on the same lines, one of their best plot twists in these games has to be Malva being a Team Flare member and an Elite Four member. If you didn't catch it initially, after some point, I think everyone could tell Malva was a Team Flare member. However, what I didn't catch was that Malva didn't appear during Team Flare's climax, nor was I actually ever expecting her to appear ever at all. I just thought she was a news reporter lady, but boy was I wrong, because similar to Giovanni, she holds a powerful position in the Pokemon world while being a part of an evil team, and even crazier, as an Elite Four member, the words she uses are ruthless. It's the complete opposite of her holocaster news reporter personality, and that whole thing just took me by surprise. Now, before we begin Gen 7, let me just say I think Generation 7 is heavily underrated, and honestly, I do think that Base Sun and Moon are some of the best Pokemon games. In terms of difficulty and gameplay, that Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon are some of the best games. Sun and Moon just has a better story. But just like the rest of these last few generations, the plot twists regarding the villains fell flat. In Sun and Moon, it was meant to be a surprise that Lucian and the Aether Foundation were evil, and I know the opening sequence was there, but like, the way it was teased and all, we were supposed to think that Team Skull was evil and not these guys, but it came as no surprise when we found out that Lucian was a psycho. And in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, they try to retcon this and add another twist on top of this, making Necrozma the villain of these games, but Lucian suddenly being an okay character didn't work, nor did Necrozma being seen as the villain have any significance at all. Both of these sucked, with Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon having it worse, but nothing in Generation 7 can be worse than the twist of Trace. Should have kept Blue as a champion if you wanted a real twist. Gen 7 did have other crazy plot twists though, such as finding out that Guzma as a child was abused and hurt by his own father, allowing players to empathize with Team Skull's leader, and the team actually being strong enough to take over a whole town, Nihilego taking over Lucian's whole body, the confirmation of aliens and humans existing in a different world as Pokemon trainers, Guzzlord having had destroyed a world similar to our own, Annabelle as a faller. There are so many that I don't want to make it seem like Gen 7 fell flat here. Heck, even Ultra Necrozma could be considered a twist with the way it shocked people. But if you had to ask me to just pick one here, it is undoubtedly Kukui being the champion of the region. Well, not the champion, but the one to first challenge the champion title. But never would I have guessed that they would make a callback to the Scrap Professor Oak super boss and have Kukui here as the final battle. This, along with the trailer music actually being the champion music all this time, was so fitting for the final battle and definitely got everyone who wasn't spoiled to be crazy shocked. Even me, I was spoiled and I still couldn't believe it. And in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, they got us again by making Kukui a fake out and having Hau here as the final battle. So yeah, Gen 7 really got some of the best and the worst here. Okay, if any of you know me, you know I hate Sword and Shield, and one of the primary reasons is this. Between all the twists, the only twist that Sword and Shield really has here is Rose and Macrocosmos being the real villains, and that's gotta be one of the stupidest plot twists of all time. They couldn't even find a way to make the twist make sense in the game. This plot twist sucks, Rose sucks, Sword and Shield suck. I don't even think Sword and Shield have any real twists beyond that, but I'll try to be nice here and say that Pierce being a Dark-type gym leader and having a gym with a Dynamax was a real nice twist. And I guess Raihan being a double battle weather specialist rather than a stranded Dragon-type leader was also pretty cool. So there are some small twists here and there, but Legends Arceus is where it's at. Because while Sword and Shield may have had the worst plot twist of all time, Legends Arceus has one of, if not the best plot twist of all time in Pokemon, with Volo being the true antagonist of the games. Yeah, another antagonist twist, but again, it might be the best one. The genius behind this twist was that it played on the expectations and the nostalgia of the player and how they expected Cynthia's ancestor to be a good guy. It was years and generations of build-up. On top of that, it wasn't even revealed in the main story. Typically, when you have an antagonist like this, it's revealed during the climax of the game, but this revelation was revealed after the game was over, which was a curveball for everyone. This alone was incredible, but on top of that, Game Freak decided to take it a step further and another step further by giving us a Cynthia level fight with our Hoenn team, and to make matters worse, when you think you win, Giratina appears out of nowhere, and even worse than that, there's a second stage to the Giratina fight, effectively making Volo command the equivalent of 8 Pokemon. This entire fight was plot twist after plot twist after plot twist. Legends Arceus does have some other small cool ones, like the player character being the older version of the protagonist from Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, but the Volo twist was so good that it just outshines everything. And finally, we have Gen 9. Scarlet and Violet had the most plot twists of any main series Pokemon game, for the simple fact that they had a story-driven main story with 2 story-driven DLCs, and even within the main game there are 4 different main plots with all of them having twists. It's really tough to choose the best ones here, but the worst ones are easy. Penny's whole storyline with Team Stars has the worst plot twist, with Penny being Cassiopeia and Clavel being Clyde, but like, there was an element of humor in both of them. Okay, there was in Clavel's case. I don't know what Penny was trying to do, but the way our character reacts in shock to this person with his exact hoodie and the exact Eevee bag is quite funny. By the way, add this to the tally of bad villain twists. Ogerpon also being the good guy in the Teal Mask story and the Loyal 3 being the evil ones was something seen from the day we got the teaser of the Teal Mask, so that fell flat, but I think every other twist in Scarlet and Violet hits real hard. Whether it was as simple as Nemoto being the true champion of the game, or something as emotional as a Psycha from Mabostif almost passing away, to it luckily being perfectly fine. Scarlet and Violet had a bunch of twists that really got people feeling some type of way, but the twists with Kieran and the professors are the twists that really make these games what they are. Kieran, all the way through his arc, has all kinds of twists, from seemingly turning evil by the end of the Teal Mask to becoming so powerful that he ends up becoming the Blue Ray League champion, to actually having a competitively viable team with Rain, which is considered to be one of the best competitive strategies, along with Incineroar, the best competitive Pokemon, to actually finding out that he's not possessed or anything and this is just the way he is, to him catching Terapagos over us and commanding it himself. Kieran has more than a lot going on, and any one of these things makes for some really good twists, trust me, I know, but nothing in these games come close to the twists with the professors. Finding out that they were Arven's parents wasn't really a twist, since it was told to us very early on in the game, but finding out that the other parent walked out sure was. But as the story keeps going, Arven comes to the sad realization that his parent was only ever absent this whole time simply because they truly were absent from the world. They passed and had an AI robot replace them for years. This, alongside them being the real final fight and the technical final villain of the main story, was absolute insanity. Just when we thought we couldn't top Volo. I wouldn't say that this trumps Volo, but man does this twist come close. And then if we thought it couldn't get any crazier than that, the final conclusion of these games, with all the DLC events being completed, is the revelation that the whole story of Scarlet and Violet, just like the Pokemon within the games, are a paradox. We are the ones who led the professor to create the time machine, and the professors are the ones to lead us to them. The whole game, the whole plot, is one big paradox based on this one interaction, and that in a Pokemon game is absolutely bonkers, especially since it doesn't leave off with a happy ending as such. It ends off just like this, in a shroud of mystery. I know people have their complaints with Gen 9, but all the stories in the game are so good in their own right. And I don't know if you can tell how giddy I was throughout the entire video, but Pokemon, as child-friendly as it is, really does have some of the most insane plot twists that people forget about as time passes and has become more and more known. But I don't think that ever takes away from how crazy they were, and I hope I was able to convey that to you in this video. There's a reason as to why we're all fans of this series, and for me, twists like these are a big part of the reason as to why I'm still a fan of the series today.